I will never forget the sound my crutches made against the glass floor of the Sterling Pharma boardroom. Thump. Step. Thump. It was the only sound in the room. The air conditioning hummed, but the conversation had died the moment I opened the door. My father, David, was mid-laugh, a crystal flute of champagne halfway to his mouth. My sister, Cheyenne, was already standing at the head of the table, her hand resting on a stack of documents, my documents. They looked at me like they were seeing a ghost. And, in a way, they were. They thought they had buried me in a hospital bed, sedated and silent, while they sold my life's work for $12.5 million. But their eyes didn't just widen because I was alive. They widened because of who was walking in behind me. If you were the one walking into that room, would you expose them instantly, or let them sweat in silence for a few minutes? Tell me in the comments what your first move would be. It all started 3 weeks earlier. I remember the exact weight of the pen in my hand as I signed the patent agreement. $12.5 million. That was the acquisition price for my synthetic skin graft formula, a project I had spent 5 years developing in a basement lab while my friends were getting married and buying houses. I walked out of the patent office into the cold Boston rain, and my first instinct wasn't to call a friend or buy a bottle of wine. It was to drive to my parents' brownstone in Beacon Hill. That instinct is a strange thing. Psychologists call it the invisible chain. It is the irrational, magnetic pull that drags you back to the people who hurt you, fueled by the childish hope that maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. Maybe this achievement is big enough to finally buy their love. I knew my parents didn't respect my work. My father, David, was a failed entrepreneur who worshipped status, but had never earned it. My mother, Laura, treated my career in biochemistry like a cute, messy hobby that kept me single. But as I parked my beat-up sedan next to my father's leased Porsche, I felt that familiar flutter in my chest. They have to be proud of this, I told myself. $12 million isn't a hobby. I let myself in. The house smelled like expensive candles and old money, or, at least, the pretense of it. My sister, Cheyenne, was already there, lounging on the velvet sofa with a glass of red wine. Cheyenne was 33, the vice president of marketing at a firm that I am pretty sure only hired her because of Dad's connections. She was beautiful, polished, and terrifyingly insecure. "Hannah," she drawled, not looking up from her phone. "We weren't expecting you. Mom's not cooking tonight." "I don't need dinner," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I have news." My parents walked in from the dining room. My father adjusted his cufflinks, giving me a quick, dismissive once-over. "Make it quick, Hannah. We have a gala at 7. I took a deep breath and pulled the term sheet from my bag. I sold the patent. Sterling Pharma bought the skin graft formula today for $12.5 million. The silence that followed wasn't the stunned, happy silence I had fantasized about. It was a vacuum. The air simply left the room. My father stopped adjusting his cufflink. He looked at the paper, then at me, then at Cheyenne. He didn't smile. He looked offended. "Sterling Pharma?" he asked, his voice low. "You met with Evelyn Sterling?" "Yes," I said, a smile wavering on my lips. "She signed it herself." "That's impossible," Cheyenne snapped, standing up. Her wine glass tilted dangerously. "You're a lab rat, Hannah. You don't close deals with Fortune 500 CEOs. Who actually negotiated this?" "I did," I said. "Don't lie to us," my mother interjected, her voice shrill. "Cheyenne has been sending out your marketing materials for months. If this sold, it's because of her branding." I stared at them. The invisible chain tightened around my throat. I had just secured generational wealth for our family, and their first reaction wasn't joy. It was to rewrite history to give the credit to the golden child. "Cheyenne didn't touch this," I said, my voice hardening. "She told me 6 months ago that the science was too boring to market. I did this alone." Cheyenne walked over to me. She was 3 inches taller in her heels, looming over me like a hawk. "You think you're special because you mix some chemicals in a beaker?" she hissed. "You're nothing without this family's name opening doors for you. That money belongs to the family. It belongs to the patent holder," I said, clutching the paper tighter. And that's me. That was the moment the energy in the room shifted from dismissal to danger. I saw it in my father's eyes, a cold, calculating look I had never seen directed at me before. He wasn't looking at his daughter anymore. He was looking at an asset he needed to liquidate. "Give me the term sheet, Hannah," Cheyenne demanded, her hand extended. Her nails were painted a perfect blood red. "No," I said, stepping back toward the hallway. "This is my contract. My name is on the patent. My name is on the bank account." "And who paid for that lab time?" my father barked, stepping forward. "Who put a roof over your head while you played scientist? We invested in you. We own a stake in this." "You charged me rent since I was 18. I shot back, the anger finally bubbling up through the fear. "You didn't invest a dime. I worked double shifts at the university library to pay for my equipment." Cheyenne laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, stop playing the victim. It's pathetic. You wouldn't even know how to spend $12 million. You'd probably donate it to some sad little charity. We know how to build an empire. Hand it over." She lunged for the paper. I pulled it back, pivoting toward the stairs. This brownstone had a narrow, steep marble staircase that curved up to the second floor. I needed to get to my old room, grab my laptop, and leave. "You're not walking away from this," Cheyenne shouted, chasing me to the landing. I turned to face her at the top of the stairs. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "It's over, Cheyenne. I'm selling the patent and I'm moving out. You can't bully me into giving you my life's work." Her face twisted. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. I had something she didn't, genuine achievement. And that terrified her. "You think you're better than us?" she hissed, stepping into my personal space. "You're nothing. You're just the spare parts." She shoved me. It wasn't a stumble or an accident. It was a two-handed, forceful shove directly to my chest. My heels slipped on the polished marble. I flailed, grabbing for the banister, but my fingers only brushed empty air. Gravity took over. The world spun. I remember the ceiling swinging wildly, the chandelier blurring into a streak of light. Then the first impact, my shoulder hitting the stone step. Then my hip. Then the sickening crunch of my leg snapping as it twisted beneath me. I tumbled all the way down, landing in a heap at the bottom of the foyer. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was Cheyenne standing at the top of the stairs, looking down. She wasn't horrified. She looked relieved. When I woke up, the world was white and smelled of antiseptic. A rhythmic beeping filled the silence. I tried to move, but my leg was encased in a heavy cast, elevated in a sling. My head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache. "You're awake," a nurse said, bustling over to check my vitals. "How long?" I croaked. My throat felt like sandpaper. 3 days, she said gently. "You took quite a fall, honey. Concussion, fractured tibia, 3 broken ribs. You're lucky to be alive." 3 days. I tried to sit up, panic flaring. My phone. My laptop. The contract. The door opened, and my parents walked in. They were dressed immaculately, my mother in a silk blouse, my father in a tailored suit. They didn't look like grieving parents. They looked like they were attending a board meeting. They stood at the foot of the bed, creating a wall of judgment. "Mom? Dad?" I whispered. "You really did it this time, Hannah," my mother sighed, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Making such a scene. Falling down the stairs drunk in the middle of the afternoon." I stared at her. "Drunk? I haven't had a drink in 6 months." Cheyenne pushed me. My father scoffed, a dismissive sound that made my skin crawl. "Don't be ridiculous. Cheyenne was trying to help you. You were hysterical. You tripped. We've already told the doctors about your episodes." Episodes. I tried to shout, but it came out as a wheeze. "I don't have episodes." She shoved me because I wouldn't give her the patent. "Lower your voice," my father commanded. "You're embarrassing yourself." Cheyenne is devastated. She's been handling everything while you've been lying here useless. I looked at their faces. There was no concern, no love. Only a cold, hard resolve. That is when I realized what was happening. It is called cognitive dissonance. Their brains physically could not accept the reality that their golden child, their precious Cheyenne, was a violent criminal who tried to kill her sister. That truth would shatter their entire worldview. So, they did what they always did. They rewrote reality. They made me the villain. I was the clumsy, drunk, unstable daughter who fell. Cheyenne was the saint who tried to save me. They preferred a comfortable lie to a horrific truth, even if it meant sacrificing me to maintain it. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice cold. "She's at a meeting," my mother said breezily. "Handling your affairs. Since you're clearly not capable." "What meeting?" "With Sterling Pharma," my father said, checking his watch. "She's closing the deal today. Don't worry, she's ensuring the money goes into the family trust where it belongs." They left me alone in the room, satisfied that I was broken. But they made one mistake. They left my phone on the bedside table. I waited until the sound of their footsteps faded down the hallway before I grabbed it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, chemical rush of adrenaline. I needed to access the secure servers at my lab. I needed to lock down the patent files before Cheyenne could transfer the IP rights. I tapped the app. Face ID recognized. The loading wheel spun. Access denied. My stomach dropped. I tried again. User account disabled. Contact administrator. I switched to my banking app. I needed to see if the deposit from Sterling Pharma had hit the escrow account. Account frozen due to court order 4492. I stared at the screen. The red text burned into my retinas. In the 3 days I had been unconscious, my entire digital existence had been wiped. My lab, my money, my legal identity, all gone. The door clicked open. I shoved the phone under my pillow. Cheyenne slipped back into the room. She wasn't shouting anymore. She moved with the quiet, predatory grace of a cat. She didn't look at my cast. She looked at my eyes, searching for fear. "Don't bother trying to call the bank, Hannah," she whispered, leaning over the bed rail. Her perfume, something heavy and floral, clogged my throat. "I have medical power of attorney. Mom and Dad signed off on it, and the court expedited it this morning." "On what grounds?" I asked, my voice flat. "Mental instability," she said, smoothing the sheet over my broken leg. "A history of erratic behavior. Substance abuse. The doctors agree that you're in no state to manage a $12 million transaction. I'm doing it for you." She leaned closer, her lips inches from my ear. "By the time you get out of this bed, the patent will be sold, the money will be in the family trust, and you will be in a residential facility where you can get the help you need. You lost, Hannah. Go back to sleep." She patted my cheek, 2 sharp, patronizing taps, and walked out. I forced my heart rate down. Despair is a variable I couldn't afford. I pulled the phone back out. I didn't call the bank. I didn't call the police. I called Ryan. Ryan was a corporate IP lawyer I had met at a biotech conference in Boston a year ago. He was shark-like, expensive, and hated losing more than he loved money. "Hannah," he answered on the second ring. "I heard about the accident. Are you okay?" "It wasn't an accident," I said. "And I need you at Mass General. Now. Bring a notary and a recording device." Ryan arrived 40 minutes later. He didn't ask questions. He listened. I told him everything, the argument, the shove, the frozen accounts, the power of attorney. "They can't just take power of attorney because you broke your leg," Ryan said, pacing the small hospital room. "They need proof of cognitive decline or long-term incapacity. How did they get a judge to sign off on this in 3 days?" "Cheyenne knows people," I said. "And she's a liar." "I'm going to pull the court filings," Ryan said, opening his laptop on the rolling tray table. "If they filed an emergency petition, it's public record." He typed furiously for 5 minutes. The rhythmic clacking of his keys was the only sound in the room. Then the typing stopped. Ryan went still. He stared at the screen, then looked at me. His face had lost all its color. "Hannah," he said quietly, "look at this." He turned the laptop toward me. It was a digital copy of the medical power of attorney document. It had my signature at the bottom. It looked perfect. I never signed that, I said. Look at the date, Ryan pointed. I squinted at the timestamp next to the notary seal. August 14th. The air left my lungs. That's impossible. That's 2 weeks ago, Ryan said, his voice hard. 2 weeks before you fell down the stairs. I stared at the date, and the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening snap. This wasn't a crime of passion. Cheyenne hadn't pushed me in a moment of spontaneous anger because I refused to hand over the papers. She had forged this document 2 weeks ago. She had been planning to take control of my life before I even walked into that house. The argument on the stairs wasn't a fight. It was an execution. She needed me incapacitated to activate the document. She didn't shove me to hurt me. She shoved me to trigger the clause in the forgery that required me to be medically unable to act. She tried to kill me, I whispered. She planned it. This isn't a family dispute anymore, Ryan said, closing the laptop with a snap. This is attempted murder and corporate espionage. And we have the smoking gun. The closing meeting with Sterling Pharma, I said, my mind racing. My father said she's closing the deal today. Ryan checked his watch. It's scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon at their headquarters in the seaport. That gives us 3 hours. I need to be there, I said, throwing off the blanket. Hannah, you can't walk, Ryan argued. Your leg. I don't need to walk, I said, swinging my heavy cast over the side of the bed. The pain hit me like a sledgehammer, white-hot and blinding. I gritted my teeth and looked at him. I just need to stand long enough to burn them to the ground. The Sterling Pharma headquarters was a cathedral of glass and steel overlooking the Boston Harbor. I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders to hide the hospital gown I was still wearing underneath. Ryan pushed the wheelchair to the elevators, then handed me my crutches. Are you ready? He asked. No, I said. Let's go. We bypassed the receptionist. Ryan flashed a badge that looked official enough to confuse her and headed straight for the executive boardroom. Through the frosted glass walls, I could see the silhouettes of people shaking hands. I didn't knock. I shoved the door open with my crutch. The room froze. Cheyenne stood at the head of the table, flanked by my parents. Opposite them sat Evelyn Sterling and her team of lawyers. On the table between them lay a single, crisp document, the patent transfer. Hannah. Cheyenne gasped. Her face went from triumphant to terrified in a split second. Don't sign it, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. I hobbled forward, the thump-step thump of my crutches echoing like a gavel. What are you doing here? My father demanded, standing up. You're supposed to be in the hospital. You're sick. I'm not sick, I said, leaning heavily on the table. And I'm not incompetent. I'm the owner of this patent, and I did not authorize the sale. She's confused, Cheyenne stammered, turning to Evelyn Sterling with a desperate, plastic smile. This is exactly why we needed the power of attorney. She's off her meds. She has episodes of paranoia. Is that right? I asked. I pull my phone from my pocket and tap the screen. A voice filled the room, Cheyenne's voice, clear and cold. You think you're better than us? You're nothing. You're just the spare parts. Then the sound of a scuffle, a gasp, and the unmistakable, sickening thud of a body hitting stone. The color drained from my mother's face. My father sat down heavily. That was recorded on my smartwatch 3 days ago, I said to the room, moments before my sister pushed me down a flight of stairs. That's a lie. Cheyenne shrieked. It's edited. It's fake. Is this fake too? Ryan stepped forward, placing a document on the table in front of Evelyn Sterling. This is the medical power of attorney my client's sister is using to authorize this sale. Please note the date. Evelyn picked up the paper. She was a formidable woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She scanned the document. August 14th, she read aloud. 2 weeks before the accident, Ryan confirmed. Before Hannah was injured. Before she was incapacitated. This document was forged in anticipation of a crime. The room went deadly silent. I turned to Cheyenne. She was trembling now, her hands gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. "You want to know why she did it?" I asked, looking directly at Evelyn. "It wasn't just for the money. It was the narcissistic injury." I looked at my sister. "You couldn't stand it. You couldn't stand that the spare parts created something you couldn't take credit for. That $12 million wasn't a payday for you. It was an insult. It proved that you aren't the genius. You're just the packaging." "Shut up," Cheyenne screamed. The veneer of corporate polish shattered. Her face contorted into ugly, raw rage. "I made this family. I built our brand. You're just a selfish little brat who thinks she's better than everyone else." She lunged across the table, knocking over a pitcher of water. "I should have pushed you harder." Security guards were on her in seconds. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Cheyenne's ragged breathing as she was restrained. I looked at my parents. They were staring at Cheyenne with horror, not because of what she had done, but because she had been caught. Because the mask had slipped in front of the most powerful woman in the industry. Their golden child was gone. And in her place was a monster. My father stood up, smoothing his jacket.
He didn't look at Cheyenne.
He looked at Evelyn Sterling. He put on his best business smile, charming, deferential, desperate. "Evelyn," he said, his voice smooth. "Ms. Sterling. Clearly, this is a tragic family misunderstanding. My daughter Cheyenne has been under a lot of stress. But the patent is sound. The science is sound. We can still proceed with the deal. I can sign as the family patriarch." I watched him, fascinated. Even now, with his daughter being handcuffed in the corner, he was trying to close the deal. He was trying to salvage his status from the wreckage of his family. Evelyn Sterling stood up slowly. She looked at David like he was something she had stepped in on the sidewalk. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice ice-cold. "I built this company on innovation and integrity. You seem to possess neither." She picked up the forged contract and tore it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet room. "You tried to sell me stolen property," she continued. "You enabled the assault of your own child for profit. A man who cannibalizes his own daughter for status deserves neither the status nor the daughter."
She turned to me.
Her expression softened. "Hannah, if you are willing, I would still like to acquire your patent. But I will only sign with you. And the money will go to an account that only you control." "I'd like that," I said. My father made a noise, a choked, strangled sound. He realized, finally, that he had lost. He had bet everything on the golden child, and he had lost the only asset that actually mattered. The police arrived a few minutes later. They led Cheyenne out in handcuffs. She didn't scream anymore. She just stared at the floor. As they walked past, my mother reached out a hand toward her, sobbing. "Cheyenne, baby." Cheyenne didn't even look at her. Then the officers turned to my parents. "David and Laura Miller? We have a warrant for your arrest as accessories to fraud and conspiracy." My father looked at me, his eyes wide with betrayal. "Hannah, tell them. Tell them we didn't know." I looked at the man who had called me spare parts. I looked at the woman who had told the doctors I was drunk. "They knew," I said. "They signed the power of attorney. They knew everything." I watched them be led away. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was the absence of a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. It has been 6 months. The legal fallout was swift and brutal. Cheyenne pled guilty to fraud and aggravated assault. The forgery added a mandatory minimum to her sentence. She got 4 years. My parents were sued by Sterling Pharma for civil conspiracy. They lost everything. The brownstone in Beacon Hill, the cars, the country club membership, all liquidated to pay the $450,000 in restitution and legal fees. They live in a small rental apartment in Revere now. I hear my father works part-time at a hardware store. I haven't visited them. I am standing in my new lab in Cambridge. It is huge, 3 times the size of the basement I started in. Sunlight floods through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I used the $12.5 million to fund my research for the next decade. But I did one more thing. I established the Phoenix Grant. It is a scholarship and seed fund specifically for scientists from abusive or estranged families. It provides funding, legal support, and housing so they never have to choose between their work and their safety. I pick up my phone. I scroll to my contacts.
Dad. Mom.
Cheyenne. I press delete. Then delete. Then delete. It is a small action, silent and simple. But it feels like the final step of a long, painful surgery. The infection is gone. The wound is clean. I look down at the microscope slide on my desk. Cells dividing, growing, healing. Life finding a way to thrive after trauma. I turned my pain into a patent. What pain are you holding on to that you could turn into power? Share your story below. And if you believe family is about behavior, not blood, hit that subscribe button.